So hello everyone, hello again. So in the previous session, we discussed paper 1 of the UPSC CSE 2025 mains examination for the subject of public administration. So today we are going to discuss paper 2. So the aspects in general that I conveyed about this year's examination in terms of the verbal jugglery that UPSC has done this time continues to hold for paper 2 as well. But all in all, like I said for paper 1, that it was difficultly easy and easily difficult. That remains true for paper 2 as well. Because when you talk about the nature of questions that were asked, they were very simple, traditional. It was the manner in which they were framed made them a bit difficult to comprehend to begin with. But if you are able to comprehend the question, boil it down to the level of topic, subtopic, and dimension, then it is very easy. Another thing that holds true for paper 2 and more so in paper 2 rather is the interlinkage aspect. And I'm not just talking about interlinkage that we all do in paper 2 with paper 1. I am talking about within the syllabus of 14 units of paper 2. So that is something that holds. For friends watching this online, you can comment your queries through the chat section. So that thing pretty much holds for paper 2, but it was a doable paper with a great degree of certainty if you had grip over traditional concepts. The same template breaking approach that we were talking about in the previous session regarding paper 1 holds true for paper 2 as well. So the templates aren't going to take you a lot far. The terminology in terms of the directive words again has been played with here. Okay, new directive words like expand, etc. have been introduced. So again, with regards to the formula or template approach with regards to keywords, it goes for a toss. Now let us see how the units fared in the examination. And if you'll see the categorization, which I have a habit of mentioning as we discuss the question, that which unit, which topic it belongs, this time we are going for a twist. Twist is in this, one of the major twists in this. Union government and administration, just one direct question. Though you will find when we will see the questions that the unit of union government and administration, the learning that we derive out of it is applicable in many of those questions as well. Because if you see, the evolution again is on the expected lines 20 to 30. Philosophical and constitutional framework again 20 to 30. But together they represent a bloating because largely between them they used to get over under 50. Okay. So there is a bloating which is happening in terms of the areas from which the question was asked in this. PSUs continue to remain a standard 20, so is plans and priorities. State government and administration is taking a jump, roughly under 50 out of 400 of course, right? And this time it is taking a jump, again eating on to the share of union government and administration. And if you see in majority of the topics when we study, for example, federalism, we study here, not here, right? So therefore the shadow of union government and administration continues. Then if you see district administration since independence, something a standard 20 to 30 marks that have been asked. Civil service, again, something of a standard. Financial management, somewhat bloated. Administrative reforms have not been asked so much. Rather, they have been compensated by another related unit, that is significant issues, that is 60 marks. Law and order, urban, rural is again balanced. So it is this twist which is making the paper difficultly easy and easily difficult for many. Apart from, of course, the nature of questions that were put to you. The language of questions in general, for many of them, was a bit complex. Also, there is a great degree of application orientation, though it is always there in paper 2. So where do you get the brownie points? Now, ultimately the question is, most of you have studied the subject, most of you have actually revised, you know the topic, you know the logic, you have the content. Now, the brownie points will lay in two aspects. One, linkage with paper 1, and two, how much practical example or application orientation you are able to provide. Because generally it has been a trend that people score lesser marks in paper 1 and more in paper 2, right? But that content heavy approach, low on perspectives, will not fail you. So if you have done content heavy, low on perspective in your exam, it is, I mean, even if you have completed the entire paper, you have checked all the right boxes, you are going to hover somewhere around 100, 110, because the questions were perspective driven. So if you want to break this and get into the green and golden zone of somewhere around 140 to 160, then you had to do these two things, because that is where the brownie points are going to come. Okay? As well as a third and very important thing, that is depth. If, because the first question is on Arthashastra, if you haven't used the terminology Saptanga theory, if you haven't used Yogakshim and you are being generic about it, then obviously you will not get a lot of marks. So that technical depth, that conceptual depth, and the concept driven analysis were the key to handsomely score in this exam. The paper was not difficult. Paper was like it always is. There was no surprises as such, big bang surprises if we see. It is the manner in which it was presented, the language of the question, that made it complex. Okay? So with this background, let us get into the thick of things and look at the questions that we have. 1A, compulsory one. Arthashastra, we are referring to unit 1, evolution. And the topic is very simple, Kautilya. Kautilya, Chanakya, howsoever you want to name the fellow. Okay. So, if you see the question, Arthashastra of Kautilya means science of economics, of livelihood of people. So there are two elements which are there and you need to comment. Simple, right? Comprehension of the question is simple here. Now, when you look at science of economics, Artha, don't write Arthi, write Artha. Arthashastra. The name itself, and whenever I introduce these things in class, I say the grand treatise on Arthashastra, on statecraft, the Arthashastra, the name starts with Arth, that means resources, money, finance. So it's that Shastra, that means it's a work, it's a book, it's a literature on ultimately Arth, that is money. So that should be, with that, this kind of logic should be our opening window to this particular question. And when we look at livelihood of the people, we are looking at basically the welfare of the people. So doctrines like Raj Dharma, Yogakshema, okay, and the background of this concept, the Saptanga philosophy, the Saptanga theory. Now, when you look at welfare, that means to take care of the people. So, in Arthashastra, it is also given that if there is a famine, there should be a relief. If the armies have to march to a frontier and in that course some farms gets destroyed, the farmers get the compensation. Okay. Now, link it with paper 1 elements. Science of administration. Science of administration. And when you talk about welfare, administrative ethics. And the public orientation of public administration. The public orientation of public administration. Okay. So, Artha, as the name suggests, is the material well-being. Yogakshema, security and prosperity. Saptanga theory binds all this, 7 limbs. Okay. So, we have to basically justify the statement that Arthashastra was science of economics of welfare of the people. So, to begin with, we'll have to talk about, of course, that was for laymanish understanding when we are saying artha means money, but artha would not mean just money, it is material well-being. So, we'll have to encapsulate the idea, contextualize the idea that we are talking about the material well-being of the people that is at the core of the Cotilian governance, right? And then you can use Yogakshema and others to actually reinforce the thesis that you are proposing. Now, how it operationalizes livelihood, taxation system, business enterprise, disaster relief, agriculture, irrigation, right? Overall administrative architecture, the Samaharta, that is revenue, and Sannidhat, that is the treasury, okay, the Kosh aspect, right? So, the welfare has to be married with this science aspect. At the same time, to conclude, we'll have to talk about that when it was talking about science and welfare, it was not talking about a utopian idea. Rather, Cotilian Arthashastra was a realist mirror, or rather a realist manifestation of the two. Okay. And its echoes can be found even in today's policies like progressive taxation and social welfare programs. So, this is how you will complete the architecture of this particular question, right? So I hope uh, the message has been received the way it was intended. So you knew Saptanga, you knew Yogakshema, you knew welfare, you knew scientific management. It is how you bring them together in the answer in terms of a coherent narrative that matters. Next one. Trace the reasons for limited effectiveness of Niti Aayog. Simple, straightforward kind of a question where we are looking at plans and priorities unit, and within that there is a subtopic called machinery of planning, right? Because the syllabus was made in the pre Niti Aayog era, right? And you have Niti Aayog, and within this we have to find out basically the challenges in terms of Niti Aayog. So a fairly straightforward kind of a question. Okay. In this, you have to identify challenges both in theory and practice. Theory would mean coming from the structure, the gamut of function, the scope of Niti Aayog, as well as practice in terms of what is the requirement of the society. So when you are looking at requirement of the society, the competitive, cooperative federalism, Niti Aayog is working in the good governance era, so a networked approach of sorts is needed. Okay, Niti Aayog is just a think tank. It does not have the financial might of the planning commission. Okay, also the task in terms of monitoring, localizing, and the overarching vision in terms of India's own priority 1, 2, sustainable development goals. Okay, and then bring in elements from the learnings of public policy to provide that sort of a sheen, to provide that enrichment. Otherwise, what? Challenges to Niti Aayog. The notes have 10 points, everybody's notes have points. That is enough. But that is just content throwing. So you will have to build the perspective that much. One. Two, when it comes to this, how organized you are, that depends on you. I mean, you can write challenges 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you can write challenges legal, institutional, procedural. So how methodical you emerge, that is up to you, because that is where the brownie points are. Always look for that X factor. Where is that X factor which will distinguish you from the rest? And please don't be extra imaginative and fanciful in that. Okay, that I will deliver medicines from drone, though it has started in some countries, but we cannot go about wishful thinking. It is how organized, how methodical you appear as a candidate. So you can organize the challenges: legal, institutional, right, operational, procedural, like that. So if you organize them well, then it is good. Also, in this particular question, though the challenges have been asked, you will have to give possible solutions. Okay, some of those possible solutions. Now, that creates a problem because we are looking at a 10 mark. If we have so much to write, then it is going to be, we are going to, overshoot the threshold. So what to do? You can take up something which is static over a figure or a diagram, right? And save the space for analytical arguments, right? So those things can be done. Now, to actually construct this particular answer, the standard line might not be needed that Niti Aayog came in 2015 as a replacement to the Planning Commission. I mean, come on, we are looking at a 10 marker. We do not need that sort of a background setting here. Neither it is required, nor our word limit will allow us to actually beat about the bush. So the idea is that Niti Aayog is a think tank which has been envisaged as an effective body advising the government to bring about, but it faces certain challenges or challenges of various characteristics, legal, institutional, political, procedural, whatever you want to categorize. And then for reasons for limited, if don't write challenges, use the phrase, because in notes you would have written challenges. Use the phrase. Its effectiveness gets limited due to certain challenges. Reasons for limited effectiveness: 1, 2, 3, 4. And that you all know. That it lacks the financial might. It does not have a so-called statutory status. There is difference between idea and implementation. Okay? It has to go into complex issues involving center state dynamics. There are issues. See, whenever there are issues, finance, training, capacity building, institutional resilience, these are issues, vanilla issues that you can put anywhere. But if you are going to put it at the top, that means you are talking about general first and particular later. A person who is going to read your answer will read from the top, right? So a perception develops, a feeling develops that, oh, this is general stuff. So always typecast them, mold them as per the context of the question. Okay. However, it has made significant contribution. You can talk about the recent G20 in which Niti Aayog had a significant contribution in terms of policy papers, future vision, etc. Vision document of Niti Aayog 2047, programs like Atal Tinkering Labs, and then you can go on providing a very thin line on the solution. Okay, very thin space on solution and come up with a balanced view that the lack or the subpar effectiveness is not because of its relevance. It is relevant, right? But it comes from the institutional capacity of Niti Aayog itself. So that needs to be strengthened, broad based. While it's a think tank of Government of India, it should become the think tank of every local panchayat. So that level of communication and linkages are needed. So this is the way you can come up with a balanced and positive sort of a conclusion. Next one. Highlight the constitutional provisions and judicial interventions to promote gender equality in India. Highlight the constitutional provisions and judicial interventions. Now, if you look at what is the topic, what is the unit? Right. Can anybody tell me, friends watching this online, what will be the unit in this? You can Google the syllabus. Unit 4, plans and priorities. No, that's 5. Sorry. Union government and administration. No. What is the unit? We are referring to constitutional provisions and judicial interventions to promote gender equality in India. See, this is the biggest bottleneck I am talking about. If you are not able to decipher what is my question based on, every question is the test of a concept, then how will you write an answer? And this is a compulsory question. You can't have a choice. Okay, let me tell you. The unit is unit philosophical and constitutional framework. A lot of you might be perplexed. Why is this chap saying this? See, philosophy of equality. I mean, understand, this could have been instead of gender, thus just equality. Right? So, you have the salient features and value premises. And then, if you see as a second substring, because women development, we talk about development dynamics in paper 1. So, bring the link, development dynamics, women in development, women and development, all those approaches that we were talking about in the first paper as well. So, a linkage will be development dynamics from paper 1. And at the heart of it is the topic of what? Gender justice. Gender justice. Okay. The secondary unit will be the significant issues. It is because of this interspersed character of significant issues in many questions that I was saying that the paper was highly application oriented. Why? Because when you talk about significant issues, public service values and social justice dimension gets incorporated in it. So identifying this particular aspect or this area is very important. Now, of course, as the part of the content of it goes, you have so many verdicts, Vishakha judgment, judgment in the Nirbhaya case, the constitutional aspect. Since equality is being talked about, Article 14, 16, 39. Recently, the Parliament passed women's reservation. Okay. So, all these linkages are very vital. Article 14, 15, 16, 21, DPSPs 39. Okay. Preamble. I can give you many judgments. Shah Banu case. Okay. Because it is explicitly asking judicial interventions. Vishakha guidelines. As recently, if you see, there was this Joseph Shine versus Union of India case regarding adultery, triple talaq. Okay, constitutional provisions and judicial intervention. So you had so many things, right? Understood? So fairly polity-ish question, but you had to draw and make analysis from all of these areas. So this was important to actually boil it down to the topics and subtopics, because otherwise you will be writing a GS2 governance and social justice answer, right? Unless you link development dynamics, you won't get the pabadish character of it. Okay. So how this shapes public administration? Equal opportunity for women in the administration, sensitivity of the administration towards gender issues, right? Always add that final dressing, tadka or garnish of administration, because this is public administration. We are not writing GS answer, because that will be the X factor that will give you the edge. Okay, inclusion in decision making, law making, the reservation you can use 73rd, 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts as well, because 1/3 of the seats are reserved for women and all that. Okay, so seemingly a very easy question. See, the question might be easy, but to get marks out of that question might not always be easy. Okay. Next, in the contemporary times, district collector should prioritize teamwork over hierarchical structures. Basically, we are talking about district collector moving away from the classical Weberian kind of an idea to a more participative approach. Okay, new public governance, NPM, and all those ideas. Easily, the topic is identifiable. Unit is district administration unit in paper 2, and the topic is changing role of district collector. Changing role of district collector. Now, new public governance, etc. All of these things are added. Bring in participatory thinkers. Bring in Foley's integration. Okay. As per the managerial reforms, NPM as a facilitator, as a coordinator. Bring in concepts from leadership, decision making, participatory leadership, participatory decision making. And you will have a fairly robust answer. But it is paper 2. So you will have to talk about in terms of that how office of district collector is a legacy of the Raj, the British Raj. But working in the present times, it has to take care of the democratic as well as the prevailing participatory networked approach to work efficiently and effectively. For this, it has to make a departure from a traditional hierarchical Weberian approach to a participatory approach, more of a development manager. Okay, why? Big district collector has to harmonize so many actors, the parastatal bodies, the local institutions, PRIs, urban local bodies, NGOs, private organizations. So he has to act as coordinator in chief. There are so many programs, Manrega, Swachh Bharat, Pradhan Mantri Awas. So again, that requires coordination of these actors to carry out citizen-centric activities like social audit, crisis management like COVID, etc. Because teamwork will bring in more efficiency, effectiveness, trust, legitimacy. Okay, all of these things. So a fairly easy idea. All right. Next one, last one for question number 1. Examine the significance of field organizations in enhancing policy implementation of projects like Manrega and Swachh Bharat Mission. Something that was asked in the test series exactly like this, that while headquarters decide the policy, the field agencies are at the implementation edge. I'm not able to recall the exact phrasing of the question, but the essence of the question was this. UPSC has given specific Manrega and Swachh Bharat because it has asked it 10 marks. So you cannot have a broad view of things. So when you look at this particular question, we are looking at which aspect? Union government and administration. This is the only 10 marker that is there, because in union government and administration you have attached offices and field organizations. Attached offices and field organization. Of course, why you have added Swachh Bharat and Manrega. Manrega is operationalized through Panchayati Raj institutions, and Swachh Bharat, local government in general, which includes PRIs and urban local bodies. So you will have to draw from these units as well. These units as well. Okay. Now in this, you can use the thinkers like Ostrom, Hood, reinventing government and all that. okay, which talks about decentralization, empowerment at the lower levels, as well as practical examples like social audit, behavioral change, okay, public policy implementation, and all those aspects, right? So, field organizations, operational arm, just contextualize the role, right? Because enhancing policy implementation, therefore public policy. They are the executors of public policy. So if you can add the policy view of public administration, thinkers of that public administration is equals to public policy. If you can add those thinkers, then it will be a bonus. Okay? Because these collect the data ground up, they reflect the expertise, continuity, they interact with the people directly, they are amongst the people, they act as feedback channels. Okay, so first general, not generic, general, then go into specifics of MG Narega and Swachh Bharat mission. Okay, for example, in Swachh Bharat mission Grameen, there are district Swachh Bharat mission cells and Swachhagrahis. Just like Satyagrahis, you have Swachhagrahis who act like field motivators. Okay, there is a dashboard to monitor open defecation free status, right? Similarly, in Manrega, you have district level program officers who work with Gram Panchayats. You have significance of BDOs, block development officers, and people like that. Okay? Field organizations are relevant because they are context sensitive. They work in their own local context. They are the interface with the citizens. So they encourage community participation, mobilization. They are the windows for community sensitization. Use these words, right? But of course, they face certain challenges. Very briefly about the challenges, and you are good to go ahead. All right. So I told you, paper was very simple. Now coming to the second question. The second question is, the colonial legacy is responsible for many administrative problems in independent India. As the role of company agents and traders evolved into magistrates, governors, and civil servants. In a way, a very romantic take. And obviously, romanticism is not always positive, it is negative as well. In terms of how the company rule under British, then Crown, and then present day India. So if you see, the unit is pretty clear, evolution, and we are looking at the British legacy. I mean, no prizes for guessing this. Now, it gets tad bit difficult because we have so much. So in this question, you have a problem of plenty. So whenever you are looking at this, that problems are there, always take a counter view. That kuch acha to hua hoga, something good might have happened. Even if little, some good might have happened. So why this has happened? Weber, legal rational authority. All of these carry magistrate, governors, civil servants carry legal rational authority. Whereas positive and negative is dependent on the implementation. But the strands that we are carrying from the British, political, administrative, human resource related, these things are we are carrying it, right, from the Britishers. Law and order related, okay, from then only the negatives will come, no? secrecy in administration, elitism in administration. Secular, in a secular manner, these things are not good or bad. It is their characteristics which are making them good or bad. Right? At the same time, the very civil service has been an abode of stability, provided the steel frame. Right? It provided the structure. Having a governor is not a bad thing, but that governor being oppressive or a political agent is a bad thing. Okay. So these things have to be encapsulated in a coherent manner. So if you look at the features that you have inherited, centralization is one feature that is a problem. Law and order bias is a problem. Elitism is a problem. Okay. Authoritarian character of bureaucrats is a problem. Okay. And bureaucracy as an instrument of control rather than service. That is a problem. Okay. So as S.R. Maheshwari opines that there is continuity with change in Indian administration. As second ARC opines that we need to reorient the colonial institutions to democratic values. But at the same time, a lot of it has been done through RTI, through 73rd, 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, social audit, all India services, okay, Article 312. So the colonial legacy is a factor and its remnants are still visible. But we cannot say that the entire gamut of the challenges that we face today are because of this. Okay? Understood? But some problems continue. For example, the elitism, alienation of the bureaucracy from the mass of the society, lack of democratic accountability, okay, nexus between enforcement agencies and political class, these are there. So ultimately you will have to arrive at a balanced perspective. Why? Because analyze, it is not something you have to bash it left, right and center. No, you have to come at a balanced perspective. Okay. So these, I mean, it's a 20 marker, so you'll have a lot of room to actually encapsulate this. So to begin with, obviously you'll have to talk about that there is a history and therefore there is a legacy. And many of the problems, the administrative problems that we see today have their roots. But it is not that the legacy has been entirely negative. You'll have to balance it to begin with and write it in a manner that earlier they were traders and then they occupied positions of power, and these positions of power have continued. But here bring in S.R. Maheshwari, continuity, change with continuity in the Indian administration. So like that you will have to believe the narrative. Okay. So let us move to the next one. Despite division of subjects, the union government contributes towards subjects in the state and concurrent list. Discuss its pros and cons in the light of fiscal federalism. Now, if you see this particular question, it is entirely fiscal federalism. So, union is there, but the topic of federalism has been mentioned in state government and administration. Obviously, you will have to draw between union state financial relations. Okay, and you will have to draw the learnings from the union government and administration unit. Many examples are there. GST council is there, tied versus untied grants. Okay, uh, there were issues regarding Manrega payments or intergovernmental fiscal transfers. Okay, vertical imbalance in finance and horizontal imbalance in terms of some states get more, some states get less. Okay, politicization, right? So cooperative federalism, bargaining federalism, competitive federalism, all those things will be used here. Now, when you actually bring this question in terms of a structure, that subjects have been divided, but union government continues to have a say. So that the question is hinting towards some sort of an encroachment by the union in the state and concurrent affairs. And of course, this encroachment has some advantages and some disadvantages. Okay, so the introduction will contextualize this because the question itself is saying pros and cons. Okay, so there are certain needs. Why union is interfering? Because majority of the taxation power is with the union. It has to harmonize the vertical and horizontal imbalances. There are constitutional provisions that support this. Regional priorities have to aggregate towards national priorities, especially in development sphere, health, education, sanitation, environment. So you need a coherent national direction in this. At the same time, there is new sort of challenges which are beyond the state's remit alone in terms of this. That alone the states cannot handle it. So there are pros that better balancing between horizontal and vertical happens. There is uniformity, standardization, equity through redistribution, right? And the center is equipped to handle the external forces which might be beyond the scope of the state government. For example, a crisis like uh, COVID, they were beyond any individual state. Okay, and there are cons. It impinges upon the state autonomy, violating the federal principle, creates fiscal dependency. So the state governments and the local governments remain beholden to the central government. These transfers are highly politicized. Okay, and there is duplication and redundancy in terms of the human effort. Bring in finance commission, bring in GST implementation, right? Centrally sponsored schemes, COVID-19 as an example, to enrich the perspective and to demonstrate this. Okay, understood? Got it? No, try and mention that at least regarding finance commission, regarding emergency grants and all those things. You need to mention. It is not compulsory, as in nobody will throw you out, but the point is that for the sake of that anchoring the argument, you will need those anchors. Okay. Uniformity in standards, you can take the example from national policy frameworks, whether it is education, whether it is health, whether it is, let us say, logistics, right? uh, and all these things. Okay, fairly simple, straightforward question. Next, divergent political interests and financial constraints. Political interest, financial constraints hinder the spirit of cooperative federalism. Again, two questions if you see from the same unit back to back: state government and administration and the center state relations. Okay, and now you are looking at cooperative federalism. So always bring Niti Aayog in. Whenever you hear the term cooperative federalism, bring Niti Aayog in, because Niti Aayog, one of the explicit mandate is to foster cooperative federalism. Is to foster cooperative federalism. Okay, why? Take the backbone, new public governance, a networked approach. So center and state needs to cooperate, right? At the same time, political interests and financial constraints are pretty, simple. Regional party versus national party, politicization of governor's role, okay, opposition led states resisting central policies, right? We saw that with West Bengal, Delhi, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, right? The recent case in education policy. See, friends, I'm not favoring anyone. I'm just giving you the subject matter that you can include. Farm laws, okay, CAA, national education policy, financial constraint, again, the same arguments: vertical imbalance, horizontal imbalance, GST, compensation related issues, okay, tied nature of central grants. Give recent examples, like I said, of these frictions that are there, right? So pretty much on the lines of the previous question, so I'm not getting into a lot of depth in this. Okay, do try and add those administrative perspectives to differentiate with the GS. Next question. While the constitution offers a strong framework for decentralized and accountable governance, the real test lies in how institutions, civil society, and citizens uphold constitutional values in practice. Constitutional values in practice. Hanchi, what is the topic? Where are we situating this question? Can anybody tell? Friends online? Anyone? Yes, Neelam, very right. You can do that. Anyone? Philosophical and constitutional framework. Now tell me a pabadish elements that you are going to bring. Use almond and verba. Political culture. Participant, parochial, this. Okay. So this will provide you a sort of a plank to work with, the conceptual plank of sorts to work, okay, as well as you can look at the social capital. Robert Putnam. Why? Because we are talking about civil society, citizens, to uphold the constitutional values, as well as bring in accountability, transparency, and such phenomena. So you will have to first put in context the constitution as a guiding light, as a framework to provide for this. In this, to qualify, mention fundamental rights, DPSPs, 73rd, 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts, okay, other provisions like RTI, a legal right, okay, CAG, so on and so forth. Judiciary's role through PIL and the role of local government. So the institutions. Okay. Then, of course, the civil society, advocacy, watchdog role, friend, philosopher, guide kind of a role. Okay, think tanks, and then finally the citizens, electoral participation, holding social audits, Gram Sabha, digital activism is a new thing that you can add, right? And then you can talk about certain challenges that however these things are not performing to their potential with certain challenges. Okay, elite capture, lack of capacity, lack of finance, lack multiplicity of rules and regulations, okay, complex, lengthy, costly processes and things like that. So a fairly easy question, okay, but do try and mention social capital with regards to civil society and this, because it will provide you some sort of a theoretical heft in the answer. Moving further, 3B, liberalization of Indian economy has forced public enterprises to enhance their efficiency, but the effects of these reforms have been a topic of debate. Very basic question. Now, if you see, it is very clear we are looking at PSUs as a unit, okay, impact of LPG as subtopic. Now tell me, at the very basic, what are the twin goals of PSUs? Development, growth, that has got to do with the financial viability, as well as there is a social goal as well, that it is not just for profit, it is for the betterment of society. So these are the twin goals. So while the impact of LPG, it has been exposed to competition, right? It has, for the sake of being efficient, has to take up certain units, because efficiency of the public sector undertakings must not be looked at from the myopic lens of profits and dividends. It is their social role. It might not be profitable for a department of post to actually pick up a letter from Ladakh and deliver it in Lakshadweep for 20 rupees, but it is a social, which a private sector DHL won't do for 20 rupees. Right? So keep this in mind when we talk about the efficiency and effectiveness of public sector undertakings. It has to be efficient on both the goals, and at times in certain situations there can be a trade-off between the two. So efficiency here does not only mean profit. Yes, we want them to be profitable, because otherwise there will be a drain hole for public resources, right? Other thing is pretty simple when it comes to the impact of liberalization, how they have been now exposed to competition. You can use the idea of NPM, hood, right? Rollback of the state from public sector. What you have done to make them efficient, the Ratna status you can talk about, Mini Ratna, Navratna, etc. MOU system you can talk about. So all those ingredients will remain there. How you cook them will determine the marks. What recent steps have been taken? For example, with regards to the ordnance factory boards, corporatization has been taken up recently. Okay, strategic disinvestment has been taken up recently. So all of these things actually matter here. Okay. So focus on those twin goals argument. All right. Moving on to the next one. 3C. Center-state administrative relations are a matter of debate, as constitutional provisions created a strong center. Discuss. Very easy question. A 10 marker. right? If you see state government and administration, union and state administrative relations, right? Nothing much to be done here. Okay, recent frictions regarding the posting and transfer of officers, we saw that in the case of West Bengal chief secretary. Fairly recently you had governor, right? Though that will form in the legislative domain, but governor related issues regarding vice chancellor. Okay, so these are the issues that you should flag. It's a 10 marker, so you won't have a lot of wiggle room of sorts to try and mention the strong center argument, all India service, article 302, 312, 312, emergency provisions, and the presence of or the domination of center in finance commission. Okay, there has to be a rationale of that design. Debate, of course, we will have to address the pros, why this is good, strong center is good, right? And of course the cons, why the strong center is not so good. Okay, so fairly easy question that ways, 10 marker. Next, experience of various states suggests that reorganization of districts was prompted more by politico-populist convenience rather than for the ease of administration. Discuss. So when you are looking at this particular question 4a, district administration unit, right? The argument which is given for creating new districts is the rationalization in terms of size, so that a smaller area, let us say, would be better governed and a larger area would be difficult to govern, right? Often this is the argument that is given in the reorganization of districts. So whenever you look at the topic reorganization of districts, you generally talk about pros and cons, that what is the merit, what is the demerit. Between this, whenever you talk about pros and cons, there is an issue of populism, political considerations, okay, or political interference. We find this as one of those issues. So your entire question is focused on this. So earlier you were looking at administrative efficiency and how small districts would be better, how it is done. Now you are looking at reverse thing. So the thinking lens should be switched in a reverse manner, in a reverse manner. So you will have issues of scale, proximity, right? The costs involved in creating new districts, you have to change letterheads, you have to change the post offices names and whatnot. So it's a logistic nightmare. It has to be evidence and logic based, it should not be populist. So in a way, all the critique of politico populism has to be looked in the light of reorganization of districts. Okay, reorganization of district. So that administrative ease that you are talking about has to be measurable. It has to be logical. It has to be logical. Take recent examples. For example, in 2023, Rajasthan increased the number of districts. So this question is coming from there, from 33 to 50. Okay. Assam again reorganized districts. So while there are benefits in terms of deliverance of good services, administration, there are fiscal strain, staffing issues. What about court, police, jail? use second ARC extensively in this to flag out that all of these things are used for the populist and political reasons, whereas the basis should be the philosophy of district government, the philosophy of district government. To do that, to bring out the true efficiency out of reorganization, before doing reorganization, do activity mapping, population analysis, demographic analysis, right? So all these things are needed. At the same time, how do you strengthen the local government in these new districts? Okay, understood? So this was 4A, a bit more technical in nature. So a student who has covered and mastered the traditional areas and does not have the grip over the contemporary areas should have not attempted this question, right? That means you'll have to leave the entire question number 4. Now let us look at question number 4B. Lack of clear demarcation of role between the state secretariat and directorate has serious implications for policy making and policy implementation. 2 units for paper 1, organization, public policy. Organization and public policy. And the question, because we are looking at state directorate and state secretariat, the state government and administration, state secretariat and directorate. Obviously, the issue that we see between secretariat, directorate, headquarter, field, okay, line and staff, all those things will come here. Principle of subsidiarity from second ARC, borrow that, okay, borrow the principle of subsidiarity. So first put in context the significance of the two institutions and how lack of role clarity is translating into lack of goal clarity. And this lack of role clarity and goal clarity is leading to suboptimal deliverance on the ground. On the ground. Okay. So directorates are executive agencies, secretariats frame policy. So at times what happens? Either the secretariat will go into micromanagement, again frustrating the process, or it will have an indifferent attitude due to so much high architecture. There are so many veto points that get created in file movement. Between the intent and implementation, there is a conflict, there is a confusion that leads to frustration of accountability. Where do you fix the accountability? Okay, where do you fix the accountability? So you need a specific policy in terms of transaction of business rules. You need to rework the transaction of business rules in terms of the workings between the secretariat and directorates, right? You can use NPM dashboards, carry out managerial reforms, administrative process re-engineering in order to avoid or minimize such frustration of results that comes with lack of clear demarcation. Okay, the traditional issues with regards to the friction between the HQ and field, the line and staff, and all these things will come into the picture. Easy question to write for a 20 mark. Decentralized planning in India signifies a shift towards context sensitive development. That means we are talking about bottom up development. Okay. but inadequate resources and local politics complicate the realization of social justice goals. So too much unnecessary color is there. If you simplify the question, the issue boils down to issue of funds, functionaries. Decentralized planning means you are looking at the unit of plans and priorities, but you are also bringing in 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. So DPC, MPC, District Planning Committee, Metropolitan Planning Committee, all these things will come into the picture. All these things will come into the picture. What am I saying is that for a 10 marker, it is too much for a question. So the challenge lies not in the knowledge or the content that you might have. The challenge lies in encapsulating this for a 10 mark. Okay. So while participatory approaches, DPC, MPC, State Planning Commission, etc., all of that is needed. But to begin with, talk about the topic. The decentralized planning is needed. Decentralized planning is significant as it helps in the development of democratic planning. It is channelized through MPC and DPCs at the district level. See, blend in, squeeze in the elements and helps in a tailor-made development approach as per the local context. However, there are certain challenges of funds, resources, political interference that leads to realization of or that leads to subpar realization of social justice goals. Okay, once you have done it, then talk about funds, institutions, okay, centralized attitude, lack of cooperation, and all those things can be talked about. And you see, issues impact. Make a table of sorts. That okay, funds issues. If there is an issue of funds, right? So it leads to lack of realization of goals. Simple as that, right? Suboptimum policy delivery, suboptimum benefits. For example, take example, delay in Manrega payments, right? Lack of salaries for ASHA workers. These things were in news. Okay, so just make this contrasting thing. It will save you the space and it will show you the impact. And then at the end, write solutions and go on with it. Okay. See, the key lies not in flamboyance, but the key lies in how much, in a simplified manner, you can do justice to the question. Okay, so that is where the key is. Should we move to the next one? Part B. Low cyber awareness among officials is causing cyber security issues in the administration. Okay, so many of the officials have been found browsing internet, indulging in watching pornography or explicit content, right? This is also a window of sorts for honey trapping. Okay, so we are looking at law and order, cyber security, and reforms. Within law and order, we are looking for reforms. Of course, you will bring in significant issues, okay, significant issues as well as a secondary unit, and more importantly, civil service, training and capacity building, training and capacity building. All right. Of course, use some things like honey trapping, phishing, okay, non-adherence to certain norms, cyber emergency response team. All right. So how you will have to talk about that cyber security is a new security threat. because cyber security, if not maintained, can compromise administrative security. And humans are the weakest link here because it's a matter of technology use. It's a matter of technology use. So poor awareness means poor passwords, okay, email hygiene, mishandling of sensitive data, lack of capacity on part of the investigative agencies for cyber investigation. Okay. So Mission Karam Yogi, CERT in, etc. can play a significant role in enhancing. So the elephant in the room is training and capacity building. That you will have to take from here. Civil service. Next one. The guillotine hastens the budgetary process to meet the timeline, evaluate the procedure. That means you have to talk about pros and cons. Okay, when you read budget, immediately the unit of financial management should flag. Okay, but within financial management, remember there are two things that you have to take care. One, the parliamentary control, that is explicit. The hidden and the undercurrent is budget being a political document. Budget being a political document. Then only you will be, able to actually do justice to this particular question. Then only you will be able to do justice to this particular question. That guillotine is actually impacting. So I hope all of you are aware of the concept of guillotine. Yes, in the West, in the medieval times, it used to be a capital punishment. But doctrine of guillotine, when it is applied to the budgeting, means that you put, for the want of time, everything related to budget to vote at once. And generally, the executive has the majority in the legislature, it passes through. So this guillotine actually erodes the extent of legislative control over the budgeting, over the budgeting. Okay, so this is the crux. So we have to make a sort of a critical analysis that yes, at times we cannot go on discussing budget for 6 months. So it does provide a finality to the process of budgeting, but also it leads to lack of legislative scrutiny, so the pros and cons: fiscal certainty, time constraints, continuity, practical in terms of a packed legislative calendar, but it dilute scrutiny, it disrupts, it's like a shortcut, and it makes of authoritarian tendencies in the executive. Okay, but you will have to come up with a balanced view that as much as possible the budget should be debated, discussed, scrutinized, right? The guillotine is a procedural safety valve. It's a procedural safety valve. It should be used like that. It should not be used like a frequent, or the instrument of guillotine should not be resorted to frequently, right? Also, there can be criteria that at least a substantial portion of budget can be discussed. Only then the device of guillotine should be made available, right? Apart from that, the legislative scrutiny of budget can be strengthened through other mediums. Okay, the continuous oversight by committees. Okay, the post appropriation review can be institutionalized in order to make a detailed review and cut down on the losses if one finds some. All right. Next, neo-localism plays a crucial role in empowering the local actors expand. Question is significance of neo-localism. Simple, okay, not in general, but in terms of empowering the local actors. That means largely the local government. That means largely the local government. The topic of neo-localism is found in urban local government. Okay. So fairly easy question, this one, that it empowers the local government. Okay. It provides localized, targeted sort of solutions. It helps in participation of citizens, a sort of a co-production, co-action kind of an initiative or an atmosphere comes about. It ensures local level acceptability, legitimacy, trust, accountability. Okay, but there are certain issues. Issues whenever you are looking at local government will largely be three, fourfold: funds, functions, functionaries, and functionality. Funds, functions, functionaries, and functionality. So on all those four counts, flag one or two issues each, and you will come up with a balanced perspective. So it's again a fairly easy question. Next, Gram Sabha aims to enlist community participation. Same, that what we discussed in the previous, just the context changes. We are referring to rural development unit. We are referring to the rural development unit. Obviously, you will mention 73rd, 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, participation of Gram Sabha in people's plan, which happens at the ground level, for implementation like MG Narega, right, social audit. So therefore, enlist community participation through these many interventions. It bring about community participation, provides voice to the villages, right, brings in transparency, determination, enhances legitimacy, acceptability, trust. All those arguments will flow here. And then again, certain challenges: elite capture of Gram Sabha, right, parochial criterias, caste, class, muscle power dominating the institution, and things like that. If you all have not seen web series Panchayat, see that, and you can actually draw certain lessons. So a fairly easy question that way. Fifth was very easy. Question number 5 was very easy. Identify the implementation challenges and issues of government e-marketplace. Now this is a kind of a question. If you have studied GEM, you know. If you haven't studied GEM, you don't know. In case you don't know, you have a broad idea. I am not saying you are going by, I'm not going to give you the specific answer to this, because that is there in the notes. You can look at Vikaspedia and websites like that. It will have issues, challenges, solutions. So pretty standard notes like idea, right? What more you can do, and if you do not have an understanding of this depth, what you should do, it's a compulsory question. The government e-marketplace, at least we have a broad information, unless we are living under a rock, that it is a platform for outsourcing for government contracts, right? So you know one thing, that it is for contracts. That means certain vendors would come, register there, and provides goods and services to the government, right? Largely, right? There are talks that it will open up to other places as well, but that is fine. It's like creating an Amazon in India, right? So this is this. Now, what is the platform E? It is a E platform. So not all MSMEs might be e-friendly. So there will be gaps of the challenges of e-governance, digital divide, operational friendliness. Okay, so you can bring out those elements. And then the issue with the contracts, it is providing, yes, transparency, speed, etc. But it is also exclusionary in certain aspects, because the small folks who do not have the wherewithal to register their products, click photos, write English or description, those are the issues. So in that manner, you will be able to earn some marks, because this was sort of a question that was compulsory. Okay, again you are looking at the unit of significant issues, and the topic is citizen administration interface. The topic is citizen administration interface. The secondary unit or the undercurrent would be financial management. The undercurrent would be financial management. Okay, the public procurement aspect, that is there. The public procurement aspect, that is there. Of course, you will use at a paper one, from paper one you will use NPM. Paper one you will use NPM, reduction in transaction cost, etc. All right. Now, the detailed framework is very simple. If you look at this particular answer, implementation challenges, issues, how will you comply, how will you train the people, okay, the quality of design, process flows, workflows, inclusion of MSMEs or not, okay, how will you ensure logistics, last mile delivery, okay, payments, reconciliation of bills, cash flow, how will you handle grievances. I guess these many points will be enough for a 10 mark. Moving on to the sixth question. Of course, you will have to provide certain solutions. So in that sense, the question was pretty factual, if I may say so. Okay. Next is 6A. CP grams does not effectively address local level issues. Simple criticism of CP grams. It will be based on limitations of CP gram. Give your opinion. Okay. So again, significant issues, citizen administration interface. Also, civil service and grievance redressal mechanisms. Civil service and grievance redressal mechanism. Here you will have to use a galaxy of things, because it is a 20 marker. Also the topic is broad, so it will have a lot of things. Second ARC, use Sevottam framework, citizens charter, okay, idea of accountability, concept of dashboarding. Right, the main use of these platforms is to provide visibility, fix accountability, provide speed, traceability, trackability, visibility. But the redressal of grievance depends on the processing capability, the interpretation of rules, demarcation of jurisdiction that actually fix the programs. So while it creates a window for you to register, it is not a grievance solution. It is just a via media. Understand the concept that CP grams is just a via media. How do you measure the performance? disposal rate, number of complaints. Okay. So when it says give your opinion does not effectively address, you will have to talk about the limitations. What is good? What is bad? Why local level sort of dissatisfaction persists? Because while a large majority of union government related aspects have been integrated into CP grams, not all the state governments and not all of their aspects are integrated. Whereas the local problems generally pertains to the subjects related to the 73rd, 74th Amendment Act or the state jurisdiction. There is high degree of pendency, disposal rate is very low, issues of training, capacity building, overlapping jurisdictions because many departments have different circle sizes. Okay, so for example, let me tell you that the telecommunication circle of Maharashtra and Goa is one, whereas Western UP is a different telecommunication circle, just to give you an example. Okay, so jurisdictional issues are there. Okay, so while it is, in my opinion, I would say, because it says in your opinion, that while a reasonable amount of certainty, speed, predictability exists in central government services, the state governments are lagging behind. Another thing that we can work is the interdepartmental routing, because many a times matters pertaining to grievances have an interdepartmental footprint. And therefore, the capacities have to be worked at state level, at local PRIs, urban local bodies level to actually provide for better integration, standardization of processes, development of SOPs, action plans, monitoring, supervision, all those things will come into the picture so as to effectively utilize the platform. Platform is not bad, the way it is being utilized is bad. All right, next one. Do you think Aadhaar has promoted inclusive governance and administrative credibility? Throw light. Now see, no elucidate, no discuss, no analyze, nothing. Throw light. Again, we are looking at significant issues, citizen administration interface. Okay, and the core topic is public service delivery. Public service delivery. Okay, so whenever such things are there, always there will be inclusion versus exclusion idea. Where all it has worked on inclusion, where is there is exclusion. Whenever there is exclusion, you have so many examples. Manrega for the last 1 year has been, uh, you know, as an issue, Aadhaar based payment systems. Aadhaar based payment system was an issue in Manrega. Okay. So when you actually deal with this question, you will have to talk about that how Aadhaar being a unique number to a citizen has become a gateway to deliver goods, public services, entitlements. It is one for an individual, is portable across India. Bring in Jandhan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity, right? Okay, so at many places you have covered. Okay, delivery rate, you can, if you can marshal the facts, 3.48 lakh crore cumulative savings have happened, reduce the beneficiaries, administrative credibility idea, reduce the ghost beneficiaries. Okay, it has brought in so many people into the financial net through which social sector services, okay, social security services are being provided. Use Swanidhi and other things as an example. Okay, use vaccination as an example. Okay, citizen friendly, everybody can have it. Okay, and It's a technology backed platform, but there are issues. Authentication failures, last mile digitization has not happened. While you have an Aadhaar card, but the local office that you are going to get a service does not have a computer. Okay. Issues with Aadhaar based payment systems. Okay. There are obviously concerns which are broader: privacy, consent, cite Supreme Court judgments, which for many cases have said that Aadhaar is not a proof of identity or Aadhaar is not mandatory. Okay. So while materially speaking, Aadhaar has did improved the portability, reduced duplication, reduced the transaction cost, right? And it strengthened the administrative capability and expanded the reach of the government to reach to that last person on the margin and provide him or her benefit. But inclusion is only as strong as the weakest fallback. Biometrics failures in Aadhaar based payment system. There is no option B if there is no Aadhaar. So it leads to exclusion. And precisely who are getting excluded? Those who probably needed the most. The Aadhaar related services the most. They are getting excluded. Okay. So all these ideas have to be weaved in. Next, 6C. Smart policing. Do you remember? Prime Minister at a conference of DGPs talked about smart policing. Same question has been asked in our test series. Same question. And community policing programs have been initiated to address socio-technical challenges in law and order. Discuss. Very traditional sort of a question, right? Very, very traditional sort of a question. It's a 10 marker. So the challenge will not lie in content, but challenge will lie in encapsulating that content. Law and order administration is the unit. Police reforms is the topic. Police reforms is the topic. Now, when you see this question, you'll have to talk about why we need that smart policing. Because the challenges have gone multifaceted. They have gone complex. Financial technico challenges. Okay? Socio-technico challenges. Cyber fraud. Identity theft. Digital arrest. Digital kidnapping. These things are happening. Okay? Again, community policing is a very, uh, rugged up idea. The beat constable model, the uh, models which were practiced in Delhi, Kerala, Janmatri initiative, Telangana, she teams, Bharosa centers, and all those things are there. Okay, try and supplement it with the full form of smart, because this phrase was used by the Prime Minister. Okay, tech savvy and all that. T for tech savvy, R for responsive, A for accountable, like this. So Prime Minister actually made an entire phrase out of it. So all those things can be used. So a pretty standard question, nothing out of the box here. Also a 10 marker. So be very calibrated, try and address each of those parts. Okay, that the importance of smart and community policing, bridge them in the event of these challenges. Okay, what have we done? What are the bottlenecks? What are the solutions? Simple. Next, many elected women representatives in local governments in India, especially from marginalized backgrounds, often struggle to govern effectively examined. So we are looking at the local level representation. Okay, you have rural plus urban hybrid. I have, for the sake of analysis, categorized in rural. Okay, rural. But you will have to use the logic of rural and urban both, because the problem we are looking at is secular. Now you have issues, I mean cultural issues, other gender related issues. For example, the Panchayat Sarpanchpati, right? I told you, see the web series Panchayat. Okay. So while 33% is there, some states have enhanced the percentage. Okay. But there is a rural urban divide. While urban areas have done it, rural areas continue to struggle. There are many phenomena: proxy leadership, the Sarpanchpati, capacity, continuity related issues, safety, poverty, socio-cultural biases, caste and class related issues. Okay. So while the constitutional provisions have been made, they have to be supplemented. Constitution has to be supplemented by the community in order to bring out the true potential of such initiatives. Okay. So for each of those issues that you mark, because it is a 20 marker, you will have to provide solutions. How will you tackle the proxy, uh, you know, the proxy representative idea? You will have to bar these spouses from official functions. Okay. Ground level sensitization is needed to tone down the cultural, class and caste biases. A rational policy on rotation of constituencies for women. Okay. So while the numbers might be achieved, the true potential of these women representatives will lie in their effectiveness with respect to the discharge of their roles and responsibilities. And that is a project beyond constitutional amendment. So just a legal process or a constitutional reform is the starting point, not the end. Okay. So in this kind of a spirit, you will have to frame the answer. Next one. 7B. Budget is the pivot around which the whole financial administration revolves. Discuss the socio-economic and political implications of budget. Very easy. Budget as a political document. Financial management. Budget as a political document, and we are looking at the financial management. Financial management. Bring in Aaron Wildavsky. Always, Wildavsky has been asked previously as well in the exam, who is reflecting on the budget and the politics in and around it. Use the argument that administration is all about authoritative allocation of values. Okay. And of course, the practical part in terms of goal setting, in terms of the discretionist character of the state and administration, in terms of the discretionist character of the state and administration, because the budget is a pivot. Why is it calling it a pivot? Because it confers the legality, the authority to appropriate the funds. It sets the tone for the macro fiscal direction of the state, of the administration. It signals what are the priorities. It establishes the division of responsibility, coordination mechanisms. Okay, supplement it with some examples of budget. If you can marshal the figures, give certain figures of recent budget. How socio-economic? It talks about growth, productivity, equity, redistribution, how the government will tackle initiative, inflation, how it will deliver on the welfare agenda, how it will deliver on the social justice. Okay, the political implications. With regards to political implications, it brings out the intent. It operationalizes the ideology of the ruling party. Okay, it is central to the political process. Use Wilder whiskey. Okay, so basically these points you will have to use budget as a political instrument. How it is the pivot and socio-economic and political. Three parts. Next, assess the role of government process re-engineering. Promoting good governance. Very simple. I'll explain this uh, through an example. Okay. By the way, we are looking at administrative reforms unit and reforms in financial management and human resource segment. Then these significant issues in terms of public policy and problems of implementation. Budget process. What is government process re-engineering? Okay. To understand government process re-engineering, let me explain BPR, business process re-engineering. Well, let us say we are in 20, 30 years ago. Okay. I need to make a license. I will go to the license office, the transport authority, driving license. I will submit an application, right? There will be a person to take the application, other will make the file, third will check the eligibility, fourth will schedule the date, and on date when I come give a driving test, somebody will certify me. Once this will certify me, other will verify me, and finally the licensing officer will approve my application. Then my license will be printed, and then I will go and collect that license. This is a process in which a transaction or an activity or a goods or a service is being availed in a government, let's say driving license. Now, I need to make firm commitments that your license will be there within 7 days of testing. So, I will have to, in a scientific manner, study that how much time this test takes place, how much time this, and what will be the ideal time, keeping buffer. So, I will say, okay, you will get your license in 15 days. Because let us say I am making a citizen's charter, right? Now, when I am making a citizen's charter, I will have to address each of these areas. Now let us say I want to expedite this time. I will have to merge certain roles. I will have to tone down on the forms, on the processes, on the data entry. So I will have to re-engineer the process. Okay? I will have to re-engineer this process. Let us say technology has come in. I need not come here. Aadhaar verification and everything has been done online via form. I just need to go give a driving test. And for that, also I do not need the roads. There is a simulator. And for a dispatch, I will get an e-license. I need not carry a physical license. The process get cut down. But what if I continue to make the 15 days commitment? Right? So in this case, I will have to re-engineer the process, change the rules to make it less complex, to make it simple, for more efficiency, effectiveness, citizen satisfaction, bring in NPM, or rather NPS, new public service here, new public governance, things like that. So I will have to change this. This is called administrative process re-engineering. If I am doing it in a business activity, let us say I am producing cars, I am Tata, I am saying instead of 4 screws in my wheel on the axle, I will put 3 screws. So that will reduce the time of, tightening those screws. So it will impact the entire production. That was business process re-engineering. I am using it in an administrative process. So I am looking at administrative process re-engineering. Now scale it up to the entire government level in terms of the file movements, in terms of transfer of orders, in terms of the number of chains through which a file has to go. Because second ARC suggests that there should not be more than 3 levels. So the decision making has to be delegated downwards in a manner that a file should not go beyond 3 levels. Bring in principle of subsidiarity. Bring in principle of subsidiarity. So all those things together will be a part of government process re-engineering. Government process re-engineering. Okay. Now, all of these things are cutting down on time, transaction cost, making the process simple. So, it will promote good governance. How? Understand the basics of good governance. State, market, civil society, consensus orientation, accountability, transparency, participation, equity and inclusivity, efficiency and effectiveness, responsiveness, rule of law. If the process is well defined, rule of law, it is trackable, traceable, monitorable, transparency and accountability. Citizens can interact, citizens can actually help, participation, consensus orientation. All the process is quick, less costly, corruption free, efficient and effective. It is same whether I do this or Dhirubhai Ambani do this. It is equitable and inclusive. At the same time, the system is responsive. So this is how it will boost the good governance, because boosting good governance would mean boosting many of these pillars of good governance. Okay. So the GPR, government process reengineering, is rethinking, redesigning the end-to-end workflows in the government processes. Okay. Sevottam model is again a good example. Okay, e-office, Mission Karam Yogi, CP grams, okay, single window clearance systems. You can use so many examples. Passport Seva Kendra 2.0, okay, one nation, one ration card. All of these examples you can use. But it is not a static process. You will have to evolve with time. Okay, so it's a continuous endeavor. It is not a one-time endeavor. Last question of the paper. That is question number 8. Metropolitan cities are providing major portions of national wealth, okay, but their governance is fraught with intricate institutional relationships. Explain. Urban local government, right? We are referring to the unit of urban local government, development dynamics, politics and administration, with special reference to city management. City management. Okay. Ultimately, it is a question related to local government. We have to see that in urban context, issues of fund, functions, functionaries. Focus is on integrate institutional relationships. That means relationship between urban local government and state, with parastatal bodies, and within this. And within this. Now, if you look at this, the Metropolitan Planning Committee, okay, issues of dual control, whether in case of Delhi, center and the UT government, at the district level, the district elected body, as well as the district magistrate, okay. So you need a polycentric sort of a coordination between these multiple agencies. So when it is looking at these institutions, integrate institutions, look at the financial angle, functions angle. Sometimes complementary functions are not bisected, or rather are bisected, not synergized. Some other agency handles the, let us say, drainage and sewage disposal. For example, in the case of Delhi, it is the municipal corporation. Whereas, which agency provides water? The Delhi Jal Board, which is a parastatal body, right? So, bring out examples like this. Okay. Now, this is the logic part of the question, but the canvas is being set by metropolitan cities are providing major portions of national wealth. Okay, that means we'll have to talk about that their governance is so centric, or their good governance is so centric to the national growth. I mean, look at what happened in Gurgaon, right? During rains. It was a sorry state. It was really a sorry state. What happened? So, we'll have to talk about that, how they generate so much wealth, growth, GDP, and hence this is a very important area to pay attention. But their governance is embroiled in challenges, leading to one, suboptimum productivity, at the same time whatever productivity is there, suppressing that. So on two folds it is, right. Obviously you'll use smart city missions and other things, okay, corruption, and you'll flag multiple things. Next, training and capacity building represent different scope and objectives. Clearly the conceptual difference. Clearly the conceptual difference between training and capacity building. We are looking at the unit of civil services. Okay, we have these topics in this unit. Also take reference from, for the conceptual elements, from personnel administration unit. Okay, so I won't get into a lot of difference, but the point is that both differ in scope. Training is task specific. For example, you want to teach a revenue officer to conduct a land survey, whereas capacity building has a wider ambit. Capacity building has a wider ambit. Okay, so as part of the capacity building, you will teach him how to make records, how to keep digital records, how to deal with people on the ground, how to hear their grievances. So training is targeted at job performance, to perform a job, whereas capacity building ensures long term resilience and sustenance, adaptability. Okay, citizen centricity. Training is again episodic, short term. Capacity building is long term. Okay, training is, the unit is individual. In capacity building, the unit is institutional, both individual and institutional. Teams, as an institution, you will have to acquire resources, expertise to operate them. Okay, so these are the key differences. Obviously, take example. So whenever we are using capacity building, the example is Karam Yogi, right? Whenever I am using the word training, it can be a computer training. It can be a computer training. The foundation course that happens at Labasana, okay, mid-career trainings that happen. Whereas capacity building is through Mission Karam Yogi, which is an ongoing, constant process. Even second ARC says that training should not be treated as a one-time induction event. Rather, it should be a part of capacity development, of continuous capacity development. That means lifelong learning, competency mapping, enhancement of those competencies. So certainly capacity building is a wider frontier. Fairly easy conceptual question. So coming to the last question of the paper. Artificial intelligence has emerged as an innovative tool in disaster management. Illustrate with example. Now this illustrate with example was a challenge because otherwise so you can cook up stories about AI very easily. Clearly, we are looking at the unit of significant issues in which we find the topic of disaster management. So this is a break from the past in the sense that previously the questions have been revolving around the NDMA, the authority, disaster management authority, the act, right? Or things like disaster resilience, disaster preparedness, disaster response. So how can actually AI help? AI can help in prediction, early warning, risk mapping. It can help in speeding up the relief and response as well as recovery and resilience. Okay. So now if you see, the Indian Meteorological Department is trying to come up with an AI based system to predict thunderstorms and lightnings and such events. Heat wave risks. NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, started using AI and GIS based, Global Information System based, tools for heat wave risk mapping. Now you see the alerts come no on the phone, on the text that, for example, the rain alert has been issued in NCR. Okay, so the thing comes there. Okay, you can use AI based drones to locate survivors in a debris, right? Also, there is a UN's project AI for earthquake that is in the works, right? So all those things, I guess this should be sufficient as the examples, and in what areas I have already flagged that. So that way the question was simple if you had these examples in your kitty. So with this, we have come to the end of the discussion on paper 2. So now we have completed the discussion for both paper 1 and paper 2 of the 2025 mains examination for public administration optional, right? Again, there is a caveat that can there be more suggestions regarding the answers? Of course, right? But the point here is we were trying to create a coherent narrative around the topics, trying to build those interlinkages, trying to at least gather those ingredients which are required for that answer and organize them in a logical fashion to score maximum marks. As far as I remember, nobody scored 250 out of 250 in any paper, right? So the attempt is to score maximum marks to actually capitalize on an X factor that we can bring about in our answers. So any queries before we part our, before we call this a session? Any queries that you have? Any queries, friends online? We'll try that, Monish. We'll try. Okay. All right then. Thank you. Thank you so much.